Good afternoon, everyone. So first of all, sorry for making you all wait, but thank you all for being very patient. I'd like to also thank Student Media today for allowing us this opportunity. This is the second of 3 speakers, hopefully nationally recognized speakers, that Student Media will be bringing you all this year. So welcome and please enjoy the opportunity. So to start off, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Michael Fashana. I'm the president of the Memorial Union, and I have the pleasure of introducing 2, at least in my opinion, Oregon legends to you all. And so the first is Mike Parker, who's OSU's very own announcer. And so Mike has been broadcasting. He's the voice of the Beavers, as you may have heard before, for about 14 years now, doing Beaver basketball, football, and baseball. So we're honored to have him today to help facilitate the conversation. Woo woo! And the next person.
We got a game where we get Mike Parker to bring it to us. That guy delivers. Keep talking.
Yeah, keep talking. So you might have guessed who the second person I'm going to introduce is by now. But that's Mr. Bill Walton. And so Bill's here today to talk a little bit about his sports and broadcasting career, as well as give us a little bit of his perspective on this season's NCAA Pac-12 men's basketball teams. So I hope you're all excited for that. Bill actually is a Pacific Conference native. Where he played for UCLA back when it was the Pac-8 and actually helped lead his team to 2 national titles.
Pac-8, that means I'm really old.
that You said it, not me. But he also was. So after he was able to do some big things down at UCLA, he actually went on to play in the NBA, where he played for multiple teams and was able to win many, many awards, including an MVP award during the regular season and also a playoff MVP award. And so with that, he was able to win 2 NBA World Championships. One was with the infamous Boston Celtics. I don't know if you like them all. And celebrated. Well, how about the other one with the infamous Portland Trail Blazers? So I know that's a title we all hold near and dear to our hearts, especially me. So thank you for that.
I know it's never good to interrupt a man with a microphone, but you took the word infamous. I'm not sure about that.
Okay. And so after that, Bill went on to broadcast. Bill went on to broadcasting, where he worked with networks like ABC, CBS, NBC, MSNBC, Fox, Turner Sports, and ESPN. Does that sound about right? Couldn't keep a job. And so in 2001, he ended up winning an Emmy for Best Live Sports Television Broadcaster. So as you can see, he's very accomplished, and you can probably guess why we had him out here today. So if you could join me all in welcoming Bill Walton.
Mike, what a pleasure to be with you. I don't know if these folks know how but when we think of delivery, and we have 1 microphone for 2 people?
They're going to bring me one too, I think.
I don't need one. Can you hear me in the back, or is it better with this?
Here we go. We're good. Bill.
You need a microphone better? Okay. We speak of delivering. One of the greatest skills in life is delivering peak performance on command. And that defines Mike Parker. His ability to come up with the big call, with the creative enthusiasm, the passionate exuberance, to make it feel like not only this is the biggest moment ever, but that they're all playing just for you. And so when we talk about delivering, visualize me being part of one of the great teams in basketball history. Now, understand that I've been part of 3 of the greatest ever. The UCLA Bruins, where I started 43 years ago. The records still stand to this very day under the great Johnny Wooden. The Portland Trail Blazers, where I played my best basketball, We were the youngest team in the history of the NBA to ever win the championship. And then the Boston Celtics, my boyhood dream team, Bill Russell, Red Auerbach, all the legends. But I've also spent 6 years on the Clippers, so I know the difference between the top and the bottom. But this sense, the sense of delivering. At practice one day, we're getting ready for the big game, and we have an unbelievable team that has Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, Robert Parrish, Dennis Johnson, Danny Ainge, Scott Wedman, Jerry Seasting, Rick Carlisle, Greg Kite, Sam Vincent, and David Thirdkill. And our coach is the legendary Casey Jones, Hall of Famer on every front, the most like John Wooden of any coach I ever played for on and off the court. And so before the game, at the end of practice, we're going to play the Utah Jazz. And it's the first time we're ever going to play against Karl Malone. Now, this is the first time that any of us had ever heard of him. Because in those days, this was before the ESPNification of the world and the incredible hype where if you make one basket, you're the greatest player ever. And so all of a sudden, we're going to call it, nobody had ever heard of him. And one of Casey Jones's tactics and techniques as a coach, as a leader, was to get everybody involved and to ask the guys, hey, do you know anything about the other team that you might want to share about some of their talent coming in so we can play better tonight? And we didn't know anything about it, but Danny Ainge, who knew everything about every subject, to this very day, he'll be the first to tell you. And Danny pipes up, and he was like our younger brother. And anybody here have a younger brother? Oh my gosh, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So that was Danny always yapping over the side. So Danny said, yeah, Coach, I got something to say. So what do you got, Danny? So Danny says, Utah, they got this new guy. His name is Karl Malone, and he's really good, and he's big, and he's tough, and he's fierce, and he's just powerful, and he's always doing all these great things. In fact, Karl Malone is so good, he's got a nickname. They call him the mailman because he delivers. And Larry Bird goes, the mailman delivering? If he's the mailman, I'm Federal Express. The post office closes at 5 and I deliver 24/7. And that's what Mike Parker does. Mike, it's a privilege to be here with you today. I feel good. Back in Oregon, this is great. Blazers won last night. Ducks won. I know that's really important for you guys. Beavers sadly lost. We got to change that. The reason we're late today is that over there talking to Craig Robinson about what we're going to do about that.
And Bill, on that note, and thank you for the introduction. Is this thing?
That's not on, no.
Not on. Okay. Well, thank you for the unique introduction. And what, if you don't mind sharing a little bit with us, the guys I know, Roberto Nelson was tweeting about the opportunity to get to meet you and talk to you. Were you able to talk to the players a little bit too? And what were some of the things you conveyed with Craig?
The players were in church, and they were in the library, and so they were not available.
As always.
Can we somehow figure out how we can get this to work here? Here comes another one right here. We hope. We talked about the ultimate story of what this group, this community, this school, this team, everything, is facing. How you build from nothing. And when Mike and I were together so many years ago, granted, I look old enough to be his grandfather, but Mike and I were together when I joined the Trailblazers 39 years ago. And how incredible it was, because there was nothing here. The entire state of Oregon had 300,000 people living in it, and 250,000 of those people lived in the city of Portland. And it was an expansion franchise, and they just didn't know what to do. But we kept fighting, and we kept building, and we utilized all the lessons in life that go into building, into making something valuable. And that's what your job is as individuals, your job of selling, your job of public relations, your job of creating, of dreaming, and ultimately of selling who you are, so that somebody else out there will pay you. Because ultimately in the game of life, which is all-inclusive of participation, involvement, spectators, consumerism, production, you have to have that valuable commodity that someone else will pay for. And the Trailblazers, we went from an expansion franchise that could never win a game to being one of the most successful and valuable sports commodities in the history of basketball. That still holds to this day the record, one of the proudest records that I'm part of in my entire life, 18 consecutive years of no tickets available. Sold out for 18 consecutive years. Go Blazers Glow. We are extremely proud. But that sense of how you get there and how you build. And think for a moment of the components that go into your life that permeate every discipline. This is a media group, right? It's a media class. I mean, who would have ever thought that Bill Walton would be addressing a bunch of media students? Are you kidding? When Mike and I first got together, I couldn't say a word. I'm a lifelong stutterer. English is my fifth language after stammering, stumbling, spitting, and stuttering. And so it was unbelievable because learning how to speak is my greatest accomplishment in life. And when I was lying on a hospital bed 23 years ago, March 15th, 1990, I'm lying in a hospital bed in Whittier, California. Whittier, the birthplace of Richard Nixon, the Prince of Darkness. And here I am, trying to get better. Life is about choices. Life is about sacrifice and discipline and figuring out where you're going to go and how you're going to get there. But if you're ever going to try to get better and you're trying to dream about a better tomorrow, don't go to the Prince of Darkness's hometown. But there I was, lying in this hospital bed, about to undergo my 30th operation. 30th orthopedic operation. The first 29 were a piece of cake because they were all about me getting back into the game of life through basketball, which is what I lived for, basketball. The most perfect game of all. All you have to do is wait for the opening tip. Basketball, unlike football, which is basically a halfway house between the army and prison, or baseball, which is a bunch of out-of-shape guys standing around, scratching themselves, taking steroids, and waiting for the game of life to come to them. But now, all of a sudden, well, what are we looking at here? Yeah. Me playing baseball. Now, see, that's the way life works. And so here I was, lying in this hospital bed, going to undergo my 30th operation, which was going to be tough because it was going to be an ankle fusion, and I was never going to be able to play basketball again. Because in an ankle fusion, they take a big electric saw, and they cut all the ends of the bones off in your foot and ankle, and they push this big, massive, bleeding ball of bone together. And they put two big plates on either side of it, and they go around and they bolt it together with a big power drill, just so I could come here to Oregon State University on January 11th, 2013. And so while I'm lying there, realizing full well that my life is over, because I had lived to play basketball, but I had also mistakenly used the game as a shield. I was a very good student, 3-time academic All-American, Academic All-America Hall of Fame. Basketball was a dream for me because I didn't have to talk to anybody. The lifelong stuttering problem. Practiced basketball all by myself. Could live in my own dream world. But now it was gone. And I was never going to be on the bus, in the huddle, in the locker room, with the team, with the guys in the game ever again. And so through the tears and sadness and loss of everything just spiraling helplessly and hopelessly out of control, the lightning bolt flash of inspiration that's searing across the smoking crater that's my mind, it just became crystal clear to me that moment. And it dawned on me that when you're 6'11", have red hair, big nose, freckles, a goofy, nerdy-looking face, you can't talk, and you're a deadhead, having been to now more than 835 Grateful Dead concerts, that television is the only career possibility to pursue. And so they looked at me, and they said, "Walton, are you kidding? What are you doing here? We're not going to put you on television. You're going to start stuttering. You're going to start spitting all over everything. You're going to start talking about Jerry Garcia, Bob Dylan, and Neil Young. We can't have that, so get out of here." but because of all the lessons in life that I learned from people like Mike Parker, my parents, my first coach, my best coach, Rocky, Chick Hearn, the greatest broadcaster I've ever known, with the exception of Mike Parker. John Wooden, the 6 Hall of Fame coaches that I played for, Lenny Wilkins, Jack Ramsey, Casey Jones, Gene Shue, Denny Crum, Red Auerbach. I put it all together and was able to take that step back and come at it one more time. Now, every time I kept coming back at it, they kept saying no. And then I would take another step back and come at it again. And the perseverance and the persistence, the final tools in your ability to overcome the adversity that's sure to come in your life. I finally got my first chance to call a game. Made no difference to me that it was a CBA game on the radio from Bakersfield, California on Christmas Day for no pay, and the team and the entire league were folding the next day. But yeah, I was broadcasting. And then I got my first break. And there's not a person in this room, I don't care how old they are, how successful they are, whatever's happened to them, there's not a person in this room that can't look back in their life and they say, you know what? I'm here today at this spot because of what someone else has done to help me. And their sacrifice and their selflessness to give me a chance. And I got that chance. I got a chance early on in my broadcasting career. In a career that people said, no, that'll never happen. Walton talking on television? Are you kidding? But I got a chance to call a game early on with Dick Enberg. Dick Enberg, who just turned 78 2 days ago. And Dick and I are calling this game, and I am just terrified. It's a big game, huge, television, everything, fantastic. And I'm sitting on my stool, and I am nervous as can be, and just sweating profusely. I can't do this. It's just too hard. What am I going to say out there? I'm writing everything down. I'm chewing the gum. I'm practicing over and over in my mind how it's all going to play out for the open, and I'm just terrified. And the producer starts counting us down, 10, 9, and I look over at Dick, and he's just having the time of his life. He's sitting there on his stool. He's waving to all the pretty ladies in the crowd. You know, he's got his legs crossed. He's signing some autographs for the children, maybe having a glass of wine or two before that red light comes on. He knows he's just going to start talking for the next 2 to 2.5 hours about life and basketball, and the producer's going 6, 5, 4, and he looks over at me and he says, Walton, you look terrible. What's wrong with you? I said, I can't do it, Dick. It's just too hard. I don't know what I'm doing here. I got to get out of here. And now the producer's going 3, 2, 1, and Dick leans over, pats me on the leg and says, Billy, don't worry about a thing. That red light's going to come on in another 1 second. There's going to be 35 million people hanging on every word you say. Thanks a lot, Dick. At the end of the line, when I was forced to stop 6 years ago because my spine failed me, at the end of the line, I was named one of the top 10 pundits in all of media. I was named one of the top 20 sports business representatives around the entire globe, and I was named one of the top 50 sportscasters of all time. I'm the luckiest guy in the world.
And Bill,
So that person who tells you that'll never work, you know first thing, just go right on by him and keep chasing your dream. And that's your challenge. Your challenge as the world changes immeasurably. Who would have ever thought back 39 years ago?
yeah, and along the way today, we're going to give you opportunity to ask any questions, and that's, I know
Yeah,
Bill
jump in
wants it
anytime.
that way. So if
Throw
somebody,
your hand in the
get
air.
your hand in the air and a microphone will come. What's that? Oh, go
Oh,
Lakers.
please.
Well,
This
except
is
for
Blazer country here. This is Oregon, this is the United States. We believe in freedom of speech to some extent.
Bill, in terms of part of why you're here and making a tour through the Pac-12 networks and visiting campuses again is you're back broadcasting again. And you've been through a harrowing 6 years to get back to this place. Tell us a little bit about
The hardest thing I've ever done in my life. 6 years ago, I was on top of the world. I had it all. Bear in mind that in life, everything you ever do, it's going to come back to the foundation that you have. Now, in athletics, the structural, skeletal health is based on your feet. I've got horrendous feet. I've got structural congenital defects in my feet that led to an endless string of stress fractures. I've had 36 orthopedic operations. I've got 2 fused ankles. My knees, hands, and wrists don't work. I've got a knee that needs to be replaced, and now I have a fused spine. Other than that, everything is fantastic out there, folks. But in the foundation, if the foundation is bad in whatever you do, everything up the line will eventually go bad, and that's what's happened to me. When I was 12 years old, I was playing basketball in my hometown of San Diego, where I still live. I was playing against some really old guys. They were in their 30s, and I was just torching them, having a big day, and they got mad, and they took me down. They took me down with a high-low, and I tore up my knee. And I was never the same again. I had to have my first operation when I was 13 years old. When I was 21 years old, I was playing for UCLA. High above the basket, making a play on the ball. Hadn't lost a game in 5 years. Guy from the other team in a Pac-8 conference game, in a despicable act of violence and dirty play, came from the other side of the court and took my legs out from underneath me, flipped me over, landed flat on my back. I broke 2 bones in my spine. Spent the next 11 days in the hospital, got up, put a corset on with steel rods in it, flew across this great country of ours, and we lost the 88-game winning streak. Things were never the same. Then, chasing it down for all those years. So I got bad feet, now I got a bad knee, now I've got a bad spine. I'm trying to put it all together, keep chasing it down, but it's not happening. And finally, after all those years of flying, endless, countless, mind-numbing airplane rides, horrific hotels. You can't stand up in it. You can't sleep on the bed. Furniture built for preschool children. Unbelievable.
Okay, for me.
I got off the airplane, and I could no longer move. My spine failed me. I spent 3 years on the ground in unrelenting, excruciating, debilitating pain. My life was over. I could only describe the pain as being submerged into a vat of scalding acid that had an electrifying current running through it, and I could never get out, ever. My life was not worth living. I was on the edge of the bridge, ready to jump. If you've ever been there, and one day I hope none of you ever get there, but at some point, bad things happen to your body. And that was me. If I had a gun, I would have used it, but I was saved. I was saved by an incredible doctor with a vision, with a plan, in conjunction with a startup company that has revolutionized spine surgery. And in a brand new operation, they gave me my life back. 8.5 hours of surgery, 4 incisions across my spine, took all the junk and detritus out from 57 years of life in the fast lane, straightened everything up, bolted it all back together, big long titanium rods, a rector set cage to hold it all together, spacers between all the vertebrae. Now I'm back in the game of life, and I'm chasing it down one more time. And I'm indeed the luckiest guy on earth, because I got a chance. I got a chance to do something. And one of the things that I've been doing, as I've now getting back in the game of broadcasting, back and listen to that music as well. And there's a great new album out, Neil Young's Psychedelic Pill, of which I encourage a daily consumption of the album. And the 4 songs, there's 8 songs on 2 CDs, but there's 4 songs that are timeless, legendary anthems. For the Love of Man, Ramada Inn, Born in Ontario, but the song I want to talk about right now is Walk Like a Giant. And that's what I want to do, walk like a giant. And the lyrics go something like this. How does it start? Think about how good it feels. Think about how close we came. I want to walk like a giant on the land. I don't want to float like a leaf in the stream. And so while I live by so many of John Wooden's mantras, one of them being, it's not how big you are, it's how big you play. It's not how high you jump, it's where you are and when you jump. I want to be that giant. I want to be that giant like Mike Parker. I want to be that guy who stands so tall, so straight, in the face of adversity, in the face of tough challenges, to where we can get out there and make that difference and be that person that inspires others to care. Because unless you care about where this country, where this world is going, we have no chance. My generation has let yours down. We've saddled you with unbelievable debt, not only student debt, but national debt as well. We've saddled you with intractable problems that we've just walked away from. And we're looking at you, young people, and saying, you go fix them. And that's not right. And that's why I'm out here fighting. That's why I'm out here trying to be part of something special here at the Pac-12 network, where we're, with ESPN, we're creating jobs, we're creating value, we're creating opportunity, exposure for people to come and build their dreams. And what could be better? I'm just thrilled and privileged to be a part of this special squad.
Does anyone have a question for Bill? Anybody? Okay, Barry here.
Or does this man want to just talk about the Lakers back here? Come on.
Thanks.
And there's some people that are happy the Lakers are going down.
Well, one question I wanted to ask you is, I'm sure you got just an infinite amount of wisdom from Coach Wooden over the years. What's really one thing that maybe sort of stuck with you or really has stayed the test of time of something that he's said to you?
So many regrets in my life. As big a one as imaginable on an individual basis for me, on a selfish basis, is that when we played for Coach Wooden, we were teenagers. We were college students, 17, 18, 19 years old. And we had no idea what this silly old man from Martinsville, Indiana was talking about. Because everything he taught us turned out to be true. His pyramid of success, which we thought was the dumbest thing ever. His 7-point creed, which we thought was quirky and foolish and funny. His 2 sets of threes, which we thought were nonsense. His maxims, his tools to overcome adversity, all the things that go into building that foundation. But what he did teach us ultimately, as I throw out the challenge to each and every person here today, to search for, to find, and to learn from the master teachers, and to don't do what I did with Coach Wooden, which was lead him to the brink. Because while I was Coach Wooden's easiest recruit, I was also his worst nightmare. And I drove him to an early grave at 99. But here was a guy who gave up his life for us, the way so many other people here who have built this fantastic university, this great community of Corvallis here. And that sense of what a great man, what a great person, what a great teacher does for you. And I'm sure there's so many of them right here at this school. I just came from Craig Robinson's office, and the ability to learn from him and to be exposed to new ideas and new directions, and how he had gone to the same undergraduate college as one of our sons did, and just absolutely so perfect. But what Coach Wooden taught us ultimately how to do. And in college, in school, you will never remember in life the date of the Magna Carta. You'll never remember the periodic table formulas. But what Coach Wooden taught us how to do is what any great teacher does. They teach you how to learn, how to think, and how to compete. And he was an unbelievably organized, disciplined, and structured person in everything in his life. And it was just absolutely incredible for me, because I threw it all away. And I led him to write a special maxim just for me that he gave to me upon graduation from UCLA. To Bill Walton, it's the things you learn after you know it all that count. John Wooden. And that still sits on my desk at home. And when I went to see him in the hospital at the very end, and we had been best friends and antagonists forever, I argued with Coach about everything. When I first got to UCLA in 1970, 43 years ago, Coach Wooden was a young, spry, healthy guy, rosy cheeks, jet black hair, debonair with a real spring and bounce to his step. Within 18 months of me being there, the guy had 2 heart attacks and was all bent over, his hair turned chalk white. I just ruined his life. I argued with him about everything. about Vietnam, about Nixon, about politics, about social issues, about whether the cheerleaders could be in my hotel room on the road trips or whatever. I lost every argument, every single one. And while I would challenge him on everything, facial hair, hair length, wardrobe, you name it, he'd finally just get to the point where he'd say, Walton, I admire and respect your position, but you know what? I'm the coach here, and while we've enjoyed having you, we're going to miss you. And when he said that, I knew it was time, because nothing would jeopardize my position of wanting to be part of that special team. And so when they asked him when he was 96, they said, Coach, were you really going to kick Walton off the team? Were you really going to kick Walton off the team because he wasn't going to shave, wasn't going to cut his hair? And unhesitantly, Coach said, the only thing that matters is that Bill thought I was. And I did. And that's why, as a coach, as a leader, the two most valuable tools you have, the word no and the bench. And my children, who grew up in this whole world, pity my poor children. And it was incredible because they would always tell me, Dad, you're the worst dad in the world. We hate you, Dad. You're the worst dad ever, Dad. All you ever do is say no, Dad. Dad, we hate you so much, we're going to go to Notre Dame. And then I would always tell them, look, if you want me to say yes, ask the right question. Like, Dad, can I go to bed now? Dad, can I do the dishes? Dad, is it okay if I turn the TV off? Dad, can I go do the laundry? Dad, can I wash your car? Dad, can I do the yard? You get yes every time to that. But here was Coach Wooden with his foundation, the pyramid. 14 years. 14 years to come up with 15 words. Coach Wooden always told me, Walton, you're the slowest learner I've ever had. And I'd get right back in his face. Are you kidding me? You call me a slow learner? You got this pyramid of success. What is that? 15 words. Took you 14 years to make that up. Come on, pick up the pace a little bit here. But those values and personal characteristics, industriousness, enthusiasm, friendship, loyalty, cooperation, intentness, initiative, alertness, self-control, physical fitness, skill development, commitment to the team, poise, confidence, competitive greatness, flanked by faith and patience. I can't believe I scared the Laker guy away already. Boy, I thought they had more persistence than that. If it was that easy to get Kareem out of the game, boy, I would have started that earlier. The 7-point creed. Make each day your masterpiece. Drink deeply from all sources of knowledge. Make friendship a fine art. Prepare for the tough times that are sure to come. The 2 sets of 3s. Don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal. Don't whine, don't complain, don't make excuses. That covers a lot of ground. Get the job done. And then the maxims. Be quick but don't hurry. Failing to prepare is preparing to fail. Happiness begins when selfishness ends. Never mistake activity for achievement. The worst things you could do for the ones you love are the things they could and should do for themselves. When everybody thinks alike, nobody thinks. But the one he kept coming back to is the one that applies appropriately here. To Oregon State, to this classroom, to the state of Oregon, to the Willamette Valley. Basketball, like life, is not a game of size and strength. It's a game of skill, timing, and position. It's not how big you are. It's how big you play. It's not how high you jump. It's where you are and when you jump. So I'm scratching my head. This makes no sense at all, you silly old man. Come on, you're telling us it's not a game of size and strength? What does that mean? Kareem has all the records, Shaq has all the money, and Wilt has 20,000 girlfriends. What's up with that, Wooden? And he would come right to me and say, Walton, you are the slowest learner ever. Don't you understand it's not about stuff? It's not about material accumulation. It's not about physical gratification. It's about training the mind to learn, to dream, to think, to be the champion in everything you ever do, in conjunction with the emotional commitment that it requires to be the best, but also by subjugating the ego to the greater goals of the team. And so when I went to see Coach Wooden, in the hospital at his last station on the line. Now, when I played for Coach Wooden, there was, in 4 years, 12 guys on the team every year, and there was 2 guys I didn't like. I didn't like their game, I didn't like their personality. Other than that, it was all fine. But their names were Gary Franklin and Tommy Curtis. And when Coach Wooden checked into the hospital there for the last time, he checked in under the name of Gary Curtis. But I found him, and I go in there, and he's lying there, and he's already dead. We had said our goodbyes 5 months before. But he's lying there in that hospital bed. He's just a skeleton. He's got his arms folded. His chest is not going up and down, not even breathing. Skin and bones, just awful. I saw the man for 45 years every day, and just the deterioration over time, and then finally at the very end. And so I go over to the bed, and I bend over, and I kiss him, and I say, Coach, thank you. I love you. And I'm sorry, Coach, for ruining your life. And he kind of shudders. He says, who's that? Who's there? I said, Coach, it's Bill Walton. And he goes, oh, I thought I was through with you. But as we talk about John Wooden and what he meant and his place in history, when he was 99, some group, some organization gave him just what he needed. Another award. They named him the greatest coach ever. Not the greatest basketball coach, not the greatest college coach, but the greatest coach ever. Number 2 was Vince Lombardi. Number 3 was Bear Bryant. Number 4 was Phil Jackson, who was mad as can be about being number 4. Number 5 was Don Shula. And number 6, Red Auerbach, the Celtics, Red Auerbach. And when Red, from inside his coffin, found out that he was behind Phil Jackson, banging on that door, let me out of here. Phil Jackson, that guy just buys players. I build teams. So they had this group wanting to give Coach this award, right? And he wants no part of it. That is not his deal at all. There was never any hype, never ego out of control. Ego's a good thing, but it's when it gets out of control. It's like the abuse of anything. Whatever it is, if it's too much. I know the Grateful Dead have the song line, too much of anything, no, too much of everything is just enough. Well, maybe that's a little bit of a stretch. But Coach, they wanted to give him this honor. He didn't want it. But they finally talked him into it. But he said, I'm going to set the rules. Because that's what a great leader does. What are the components of leadership? Pull the team together. Define the terms of the conflict, make them play your game. Do what others can't and won't do. Lead the relentless offensive attack, and then hit first. And so Coach Wooden, in making them play his game, he said, we're going to do it when and where I want it, and I'm in charge of the guest list. And the only people who can come are my family, my friends, and my players. So they have the deal. And it's at the restaurant where he has dinner every night. And after dinner, they roll him up onto the stage with a wheelchair, and they hand him the microphone. Now, when you're 99, you've used your best material already. But he starts rambling on about, there's no way I deserve this. How can you tell? How do you measure? There's no quantifiable analysis as to who the best ever is. But I will admit and acknowledge that I was among the best. That's really big of you, Coach. Way to go. But then he turned it, and he said to us, guys, I want to apologize. And we're saying, yeah, the walking antique is finally going to admit he was wrong all these years. He said, guys, I made a mistake with the pyramid. And we're saying, oh, my God, the pyramid. You made a mistake with the pyramid? 14 years, Coach, come on. You can't make a mistake after 14 years. He said, no, I made a mistake, guys. I left the word love out of the pyramid. And love is the single most powerful and important word in our language and culture. And until the power of love supersedes the love of power, we have no chance of success. And then he turned it and he closed it down by saying, I also want to apologize. I want to say I'm sorry to each and everybody here in this room, and that I wasn't able to do more to help you. I wasn't able to do more to help you. And that was the last thing he ever said in public. I'm the luckiest guy in the world. I got to play for Coach Wooden. I got to know Coach Wooden. It was incredible. I was 15 years old when I first met him. There I was, much the same way you guys were just a few years ago, chasing your dream. It all coming together. It was 1967 for me. It's the summer of love in California as I was on my way. I'd already been to my first Grateful Dead concert and things were just perfect. I was a very good basketball player and everybody was coming around to recruit me and make all these incredibly outrageous, outlandish promises. Bill, come to our school. We'll make you the most famous player in the history of our program. Bill, you'll set all the records. Mr. and Mrs. Walton, I know you're working people. How about a new job, Mr. Walton? Mrs. Walton, how about a shopping spree? How about some new clothes, some new jewelry? Billy, here's the cheerleader's phone number. She's our closer out there. I mean, let your imagination run wild. And I used to think that I had a vivid imagination, but that was before I met Dennis Rodman and Marv Albert. And they changed the entire spectrum of what was going on out there. And then Coach Wooden came in. Coach Wooden came in, and it was totally different. And he sat down and he looked at me, young Billy, 15 years old, my mom and dad, the most unathletic people you've ever seen in your life. I never shot a basket with my dad, never, not once. Saw him run one time at the church picnic and fell over laughing. My mom, our town's librarian. Now my parents, my dad is dead, he's been dead 9 years. My mom still lives in the same family home that they moved to when I was born, 60 years now. And I call my mom every night before I go to bed. And the conversation always starts the same. Yay, Mom. Yay, San Diego. Yay, California. Thanks for the greatest life ever. And her comment is always the same as well. Say, Billy, did you ever get a job? I'm closer than ever to being able to say yes. And when I pull up with that big brand new bus outside, it's got my picture on the side of it, my mom's going to say, Billy, you're so close to getting that job. How cool is that? But what did Coach Wooden tell us that very first night? He said, I know what everybody's telling you out there. It's not the way the game of life works. No promises, no guarantees that can be kept. What I'll promise you, what I'll offer you is a chance to be part of something special. When you're part of something special, your life will never be the same again. But to realize that being part of a great team, that's a privilege that you earn every single day. And then he closed that first meeting down with these words. Bill, understand full well that your ultimate level of achievement, accomplishment, happiness, and success in life is not based on what you do. You're good enough, Bill. I've seen you play. You're the kind of spirited, enthusiastic guy we like here on our team. But if you want to be a champion, you want to win everything all the time, you got to be on a great team. And that's why you make the choice to come to a great school like Oregon State, to come to a class like this, to be with a great company like ESPN, to be right here with my great friend Mike Parker, and all those things. And I made those choices, and I continue to make those choices. And as we build our lives based on the goal of happiness, health, and being a part of a special team, that all comes down to our choices. Yes, luck is involved. Yes, genetics are involved. But it still comes down to the things we can control, which are our choices. And that's why I'm proud to be here today. Mike, what was your question again? I'm sorry, sir.
Well, Barry, did that answer your question, by the way?
Yeah, what was
about
that
Coach
question?
Wooden? This is a young man, Bill, 12 years old.
Oh, good.
Going to Linus Pauling Middle School. Linus Pauling, a two-time Nobel Prize winner out of Oregon State.
Fantastic.
And so but he's taking a little break, and he's a big fan of yours. 12 years old, has a question for you.
So I was wondering, when you played in the NBA, probably for the Blazers, because I don't like the Celtics. So you can, yeah.
You're
poke
entitled
fun.
to your own opinion, but not to your own facts.
Yeah. So I was wondering who the hardest player to guard when you were playing for the Blazers was, and why.
The greatest player that I ever played against, ever, was Kareem. The greatest player I ever played with was Larry Bird. The greatest teammate that I ever had was Maurice Lucas, the greatest trailblazer of them all, who was so important in my life that we named our next born son Luke Walton after Big Luke. On the day that Little Luke was born. Big Luke came to our home. And he brought us a present. It was a big picture of himself. In full rage, action, and glory, just going forward all with that incredible intensity and fierceness and tenacity on his face that never has been matched in the history of the world. And he signed it to little Luke. To make it in this world, you gotta be tough. Big Luke. Now that picture hung over little Luke's bed in our home on the north edge of Balboa Park in San Diego from the day he was born until he left for college to chase his dream, the same dreams that you're chasing. Now, are you a ball player yourself? Yeah. All right. So play for fun, play for health, play to learn life's great lessons like how to deal with success and adversity, how to be on a team, all those different things and cliches you hear all the time. But mostly when you play, just shoot every time you touch it. Jack them up. And when you talk about the toughest guy, Kareem was the best, Larry was the best but as a teammate, Maurice was the greatest teammate, but the hardest guy was Artis Gilmore. And there was a moment in my life, one of the things that I'm the biggest believer in is chasing your dream. The pyramid of success, the cornerstones, industriousness and enthusiasm. Do you love what you're doing, and are you willing to work at it? I loved playing basketball, and I loved playing against big guys. When you're able to beat somebody who's bigger, stronger, faster, can jump higher, and just has these big, huge steroid-fueled muscles, and you're able to torch those guys, that's when you know you're really got a game. So here I was, playing for the Blazers, at the top of my game. We were the world champions, and I was the MVP of the league. I was on the cover of Sports Illustrated 17 times before I was 24 years old. And here we were, coming in for a big game against Chicago that had Artis on the team. And I'm the most injured player in the history of basketball. 14 years in the NBA, but because of the endless stress fractures and all the operations, I missed 9.5 full seasons because of all those injuries. When I was most fortunate enough to go into the Basketball Hall of Fame, May 10th, 1993, they told each of us that night, we have 5 minutes to give your speech and get on with it because the bars in Western Massachusetts, they close early. So, I'm the last guy to speak. The class includes Dr. J, Walt Bellamy, Dick McGuire, Ann Myers, Calvin Murphy, and Ulyana Semenovich. Ulyana Semenovich, the 7-foot Russian woman who never lost a game. Scary looking as can be, though, but she never lost a game. Can you imagine never losing a game? And so there I was. I'm the last speaker. And at the 17-minute mark of my 5 minutes of allotted time, the guy in the back of the room, the guy whose job it was to monitor the situation, to move us through the evening, he jumps up mid-sentence at the 17-minute mark and says, "Come on, Walton, wrap this thing up. Your speech is lasting longer than your career did." But there I was, playing for the Blazers, Friday night, Blazers Bulls. And for the only time in the history of my Blazer career, I was healthy and everybody else was hurt. Maurice, Lionel, Johnny, Bobby. It was just me. So Jack Ramsey had to go out on the streets of Chicago and sign 4 guys who to this day I have no idea who they were. And so Jack comes to me before the game and says, "Bill, big picture. Big picture, Bill. The only goal is to get out of here tonight and don't get hurt." And so normally I just said, "Forget that, Jack. Are you kidding? I'm feeling great. I'm going for it here." He said, "Bill, dial it back." I said, "No, Jack. It's nonsense. These people have paid good money. I'm feeling great. We'll figure something out." And I'm going up against Artis Gilmore. Artis Gilmore, the Shaq of his day. 7'2", 300, 400, 500 pounds. Who knows? But the biggest problem with playing against Artis is that he had no comprehension that there were rules. Rules like 3 seconds, double dribble, offensive fouls, traveling, not only against the rules of basketball, but against the rules of human decency as well. And so the game starts, and I'm having a good game. And we're rolling, we're trying to figure out, we're trying to get in the groove, and it comes to halftime, and basically a tie game, and Ramsey's in that locker room saying, come on, Walton, I told you to dial this back. Don't get hurt tonight. Don't leave it here. Think big picture. The guys will be back next week, and it'll all be fine. Yada, yada. Jack, leave me alone. I got a game here. We're going for it. We're chasing my dream. Second half starts. I'm on fire. Never played so well. Every shot, I'm not even looking, it's going in the basket. Every time Artis shoots, I'm sending it back. I'm grabbing all the rebounds, starting to fast break, and we're going to win the game. Right at the very end. The only way that we're going to lose this game is if we miss our free throws at the very end. And so, with the clock at 5-4 counting down, they throw me the ball. They throw me the ball at half court. And all the Bulls are racing to me, and they're going to foul me and put me on the line. And right as they're one step away, the lightning bolt flash of inspiration, it's the smoking crater. It just goes off one more time. And because the rules of the game are that they have to foul somebody who's holding the ball. And so as they're reaching out to foul me, I take the ball and I wind up and I throw it as high and as hard as I can into the upper deck of the Chicago Stadium. And I walk off the court just exultant in victory. And I look over at Artis and I said, that's in your face. And there's nothing you can do about it. And I walk down in that locker room, I'm just so happy and so proud. And Ramsey is mad as can be in my face. He just, oh, Walton, what are you doing? And, leave me alone, Jack. We won the game. Let's go, guys. So we get back to Portland. And Harry Glickman, the president of the Blazers, the general manager, he called me up all the time for every crime against humanity. And I'm guilty of everything, believe me, folks. Because I grew up in a culture of curiosity, exploration, experimentation, and all the different things that makes life so great. And so there I was, Harry Glickman, what do you want now? I said, I got to have a meeting. Harry, we're the champions. I'm the MVP of the league. What can you possibly be upset with now? So I go in and I sit down at his office. And I'm sitting there at the desk, and he's looking at me, and I say, come on. What's the problem? He says, Bill, this is the problem. He reaches out on his desk. And this is how long ago this was. And he grabs this old yellow piece of paper. It was a Western Union telegram. Now, most of you people don't even know what Western Union is. But there was this telegram, and he read it to me. Dear Portland Trailblazers, please tell Bill Walton that he owes us, the Chicago Bulls, $45 for that ball that he threw into the upper deck of the Chicago Stadium. Harry Glickman, in classic leadership style, he looks at me, and I'm guilty. I mean, what do you say to that? Harry looks at me and he says, I'll take care of this. And he reaches out on his desk, and he pulls out this big red felt pen, takes the cap off, and he writes, F you on the thing. Now, a week or so later, I'm reading my fan mail. And when you get a lot of fan mail, you can tell from the outside what it is. This is from a school teacher, wants you to come down to the children, speak about values and morals and all that kind of stuff. This is from a young boy who wants an autographed basketball card. This is from a pretty girl who wants something more than that. I'll save that for later. But what's this? I can't figure this one out. So I open it up, and I start reading it. Dear Bill, you're my favorite player ever, Bill. I love you, Bill. It was unbelievable. I was at the game in Chicago the other night. Who were those other 4 guys, Bill? It was unbelievable. Where was Maurice and Lionel and Johnny and Bob? It was just you, Bill. And you were playing this most unbelievable game, and Jack kept yelling at you, Bill, but you kept going and going. And it was so fantastic, Bill. I was cheering so loudly. It was so wonderful. And the Bulls fans, they were so mean, Bill. They were punching me. They were kicking me. They were pouring beer on me. They were urinating on me, Bill. But I stayed true and loyal to you, Bill, because I love you. You're my favorite player ever. And then, Bill, right at the end of the game, you threw me the ball. So I write the guy back, and I tell him, okay, we're coming to Chicago next week again. Bring the ball down. I'll sign it in the hotel. So he comes down, and I meet him there. We're getting ready to go to the game, and I sign the ball. I introduce him to all the guys, and they all sign the ball. And then we're all standing around, waiting to get on the bus, waiting for the coach. Now, Jack Ramsey, who is the master of what's next, Jack, he comes through that hotel lobby and he is so fierce and he is so determined and he is so ready to get to what's next. He's got his eyebrows furrowed up back over his bald head and he's just down right through, and he comes right through our group. He's not looking up. Nothing's going to deter him from getting what he wants done. But I put my arm out and I stop him dead in his tracks. And he looks up and I point to the guy who's holding the ball and I tell him the story. And Jack just melts on the spot. And he goes over there and gives the guy a big hug and a big kiss. And he says, "You're coming with us." And he puts him on the bus in the very front seat. He says, "You tell the driver how to get to the stadium." We get to the stadium. We go down in the locker room. You give the pregame speech. We go up on the court. You coach the team tonight. We won that game as well, guys. Chase your dream. And what was your question again, young man? I'm sorry.
I think you answered it.
Something about Artist Gilmore.
Yeah,
I'm
Artist.
not sure.
Thanks, Aaron. Hey, Bill.
Play by the rules.
Bill, right here.
Yes.
Is somebody, one of the great coaches Oregon State's ever had. This is Aki Hill and her player Carol Mencken Shout right here.
Fantastic.
You went into the hall, the Oregon Sports Hall of Fame with Carol, and Coach Hill is one of the great coaches and
In
teachers
what sport?
of the game of basketball. Right?
Basketball. All right. Congratulations.
Aki has a question.
Thank you.
Well, I have to correct one of your comment.
Okay.
When you are junior year at UCLA, I was studying basketball under Coach Wooden. So I watched your practice every day. He was the best practice player. So, yes, Bill was the best practice player. And
Have you cleaned your glasses lately?
I wasn't wearing glass that time. So. And love affair, Coach Wooden loved him. Love affair between two of them are just beautiful. That I have to correct. You didn't give him headache.
Yeah.
You know that. So I have to correct that. And just I was very touched. Coach Wooden's most important philosophy was balance, remember. and he said, coach has to have philosophy. It took me 10 years. What is my philosophy? Came to me, it is love. So I was very shocked today. I have two questions. One, that very year, of course, Coach Wooden had a heart attack and couldn't come to practice 2 weeks. I remember, first week, team went so high. Let's say, usually the practice intensity is like 7 or 8, very consistent with coach. But the first week went about 15, then second week intensity came down. Somebody started crying. If you remember, probably you forgot. Then you are laughing. So
I'm guilty
Oh yeah, that's right.
of everything.
Yes. And that's, that 2 weeks period, if you remember, when, coach couldn't make for the practice. That's what you remember and what was it? I always, had a question in my mind from your point of view. Number 2, your national championship game, remember St. Louis? Your junior year. Okay. When you showed up on the floor, from a high, stand, your focus was phenomenal. Your face was pale, almost pale, so focused. And, when game started, that the very only one game I thought, coach changed the strategy and coached actually the team. Very different game. Did you miss one bucket that game? 44 points or something?
There has never been a great team or a great player without a great coach. I have played for the best of the best. To the day he died, Coach Wooden would bring up that game that you're referencing, the NCAA championship game. I was 21 for 22 from the field, although under the current rules of today's game, I would have been 25 for 26, because in those days you could not dunk. And so you had to go up and lay the ball in. And there was 4 times when I laid the ball in underhand, and they said, no, your hand is in the cylinder. That is not a basket. And so we won the game. And to the day he died, Coach Wooden told me, every single time I saw him, he said, Walton, I used to think you were a good player until you missed that one shot. Yes. Thank you for the memories. And there was nothing like a Coach Wooden practice. It was so fun. It was so joyous. It was so happy. We couldn't wait to get there. It was absolutely spectacular.
Thank you, Aki.
Yes.
Bill,
we haven't heard from this side of the room over here.
Does anybody
Was
have
this
a
the quiet
question for
side?
Bill?
Is this the
Right, let's
juvenile
go.
hall part over here or what?
Go ahead, introduce yourself and ask your question, please.
Hi, Bill. My name's Peter.
Hi,
and,
Peter.
I've been a fan of yours for a long time.
You need to set your standards higher, Peter.
I'm wondering, throughout your career, how did you balance your passion for music and the Grateful Dead and following them and touring them with basketball and the sacrifices that you had to make for those you love around you? How did you balance
Basketball always came first, and that schedule came out, and then all the other days went to the Grateful Dead. But I've been a Deadhead since I was 15 years old, and it's just been fantastic for me because I'm the biggest believer of the importance of music in your life. Music is the inspiration that drives us. Music is the window to our soul and tells us who we are. And I grew up in an unbelievable age of music. Our house when I was a child was classical music. My dad loved music. He could play any instrument. We had the radio and the piano and the record player going all the time with classical music. But I gravitated quickly to rock and roll with the Beatles and the Stones and Eric Clapton and the Who and the Grateful Dead and Crosby, Stills and Nash and Neil Young and Bob Dylan and Springsteen and all the Carlos Santana, all the legends. And what I loved about all that music is how positive it always was. Telling all the great lessons of life through song with incredible melodies. And the hope and dream that tomorrow is going to be better. And to be able to go to all the shows. I mean, I've been to more than 835 Grateful Dead concerts. I've been to 400 or 500 Bob Dylan concerts. I've been to 200 or 300 Neil Young concerts. I've been to 150 Rolling Stone concerts. I got them in there. I was chasing it down. I would always ask Coach Wooden if he would come and be my guest at the Grateful Dead show. He respectfully declined and offered if I would like to join him for the Lawrence Welk concert that he was going to that weekend. Sadly, I declined on that too. But the importance of music and the way it gives you that happy, powerful, inspirational space. And now with all the technology and all the new equipment that we have, the new tools, the messages in life, they never really change. How you're going to make it, how you're going to deal with the adversity, how you're going to deal with your spouse, what are you going to do when you stumble and fall. Those are timeless stories. How the message gets there, the consumption of it, all the different things that go into the storytelling and the way they're delivered, those change over time. But that incredible sense of being in that happy place. And with me, when I had all the difficulties with my spine and it all fell apart for me, one of the giant regrets was that I forgot to turn the music back on. Because when you're in that dark space, when you feel you have no hope, when there is no chance that you're going to make it, you're not making rational decisions. When you're in that space, that's what you see as the reality forever, and you give up hope. But what the music does, what Jerry and Bob and Neil and Carlos and Graham and Steve and all those guys, what they give you, John Lennon, they give you that sense of, yeah, we can get this done. We can make it happen. And so now, one of the first things I do all the time when I'm talking to these people day in and day out, hours every day, people whose lives are crushed and shattered because their spine or something else has failed and they've given up. I'm the guy who's talking to them. I'm the guy who's telling them, hey, step back from that bridge, put the gun down. There's a chance. There's hope. Turn that music on and find that rhythm, find that space, find that beat. And it was incredible because when I got back to that spot, and when I was coming back from my spine surgery, and how it was the toughest thing I ever did. And people would just call me every single day, don't give up, Bill. Don't give up, you can make it, Bill. But I didn't believe it. I still kept doing the work, and one day I was in the weight room in the garage, and I loved that weight room. And you know, the end of the line for anybody involved in sports is the pool, the weight room, and the bike, and that's where I am. And so, but I'm in the weight room, wasn't able to ride my bike, and I'm pushing the steel, trying to find the beat, the rhythm, and the pace, and the joy, and the happiness of the music. And I'm listening, and it just comes on, and Jerry Garcia is singing Bob Dylan's The Visions of Johanna, the most beautiful song about the most beautiful thing in the world, the dream that tomorrow is going to be better. And how does the song go? Ain't it just like the night to play tricks when we're trying to be so quiet? We sit here stranded, though we're all doing our best to deny it, as these visions of Johanna keep me up past the dawn. And it was at that moment, 7 months after my surgery, that it turned for me, and I knew that day, that moment, that I was going to get better. And so I put the weights down, I turned off the stereo, closed the garage, I went back across the backyard. And there was my wife. And when you have these catastrophic health crises, not only does it destroy your life, but it destroys everybody's life in the world around you. And so she had the great life, and everything was all fine for her. Then all of a sudden, I'm on the ground, and it's over for everything. And I'm telling her, Lori, it's time to go. Get out now while the getting's good. But she stayed. Loyalty. And then, when I got better, and I closed that garage door down, I went back across the backyard and told her, I just had tears of joy streaming down my face. Lori, I'm going to get better. I'm going to make it. It's fantastic. I can feel it right now. It's working. Yeah, after all these long, hard years and months. So 2 days later, I go out on my bike. Now, I live to ride my bike, and I ride to live. My bike is the most important thing I have in the world. My bike is an unbelievable package. Technology, science, engineering, chemistry, angles, equipment, you name it, it's just perfect. But what my bike means to me is freedom. My bike allows me to move. I can't walk, I can't stand, but I can get on my bike and ride. But I hadn't been able to ride in years because of my spine. So 2 days after it turns for me, and the visions of Johanna just make it all happen. The music is just fantastic. I go out on my bike for the first time, and I could barely get up. But I was on my bike, and I was turning the cranks a little bit, and I could feel the wind, and I could feel the sun, and I could feel the sweat. And for the first time, I said, oh, this is incredible. I'm moving. I'm going to be all right. This is fantastic. And I'm just going around the neighborhood. It's flat, a beautiful, quiet, dead-end cul-de-sac streets everywhere. And I come around the last turn. We've lived in the same house for 33 years. And as I come up to pull up and stop and go back inside, all the teenagers are sitting on the far street corner. And they're just enjoying a glorious summer San Diego day, and it's just perfect. And they're saying, Bill, you're on your bike. How cool, how incredible. Great to see you. Your back must be feeling better. And I'm waving happy Labor Day Sunday to you. And the 14-year-old boy who lives next door, he's got a couple of real hot California beach girls with him on his side. So he's going to show off for them. So he jumps up, grabs his Tony Hawk skateboard, and comes out into the street to put on a show and draw attention to himself. And he loses control on takeoff. And as I'm slowing down, he comes plowing into me and knocks me down. And I'm lying there in a helpless, pitiful ball of flesh, writhing in pain on the ground. They all run away. My bicycle is broken. My pelvis is broken. My sacrum is broken. But my spinal fusion held. Except I'm back on the ground for 4.5 more months. And through the tears, I'm on the phone with the doctor. I can't do this. I can't do it. It's just too hard. And he said, Bill, I got 2 words for you. Faith and patience, which just happen to be the 2 external words at the top of the pyramid of success, faith and patience. Do you believe, and are you willing to put a lifetime in that it takes to get this job done? What was your question now again? I'm sorry.
It's about the Grateful Dead.
Oh, yes,
and
the
you
Grateful
answered it
Dead.
well.
That's
Here's
a good
another one
band.
here. Good question.
That's a good band.
You kind of like them.
Hi, my name is Lucas, and
Hello, Lucas.
big fan, Blazers my whole life. And
Go Blazers, go.
Yep.
Big win
So-
last night. Send the
Yeah,
heat
right.
home.
So I dealt with injuries in the past and through
Yep.
sports, and can't really play anymore. But when you were with Portland, there
You
was
look just fine to me.
got to.
Oh, man.
So, what was your biggest support system back in Portland when you got through when you were getting through all those injuries? You were young and everything, and how did you handle all those injuries? And
Not very well. Because my injuries were different in nature in that they were all stress injuries. My injuries were not from falling down or getting knocked around or somebody falling against my leg. My injuries in Portland were stress fractures to my feet. Have you ever sat there in a moment of stress and anxiety and you have a paper clip in your hand and you're bending it, and finally it just breaks? That's what happens with my bones in my feet. Because I was born with those structural congenital defects of normally when people have an arch that have joints and that flexes and all the stress and energy that comes with running and jumping and landing and pivoting, it gets dissipated up through the body. Because of the structural congenital bars, I had no joints in my feet, on my feet. And so all the stress went right into the middle of the bone. So every time I took a step, every time I strode and jumped and ran, more and more stress right into that bone. Eventually it would just crack and break. And they could never see that. And so, when I got hurt, they thought it was in my mind. They sent me to a hypnotist, and the doctor swung the watch in front of my eyes and said, "Your feet are feeling great. Now go win us another championship." I said, "My feet are killing me. What's wrong with you?" And then they took me to a faith healer, and we went and stood knee-deep in the Willamette River there in downtown Portland. Beautiful day. Unbelievable. And, we're standing there, dawn. We're knee-deep in the Willamette River, and right when the sun comes up, faith healer raises my hand, and he says, and right when the sun got right over Mount Hood, it was unbelievable harmonic convergence. It was the one sunny day in the 5 years of Oregon that I lived here. And the faith healer, he raises my hand, and he says, "You're healed, Walton, you're healed." I looked at him, and I said, "My feet are killing me. What's wrong with you?" And then I was in the locker room. And it was really tough because it was a great team we had. Really, really special. It was a perfect team. Youngest team to ever win the championship. And so there I was, and I'm sitting there and I can't play. And I hadn't been able to play for more than 2 months, and we couldn't win a game, and now we're in the playoffs, and we're the champions, and I'm the MVP, and I'm looking around the room right here, and it's all my guys, Lionel, Johnny, Bobby, Maurice, Jack, and they're looking at me and say, "Come on, Bill, we're not going to win unless you can give it to us." So I looked at the doctor, and the doctor said, "I got an idea." So he reached behind him and he pulled out a big long needle with a big fat syringe full of xylocaine. He plunged it into the base of my ankle, and for the first time in months, no pain. Rainbows, calliopes, clowns, doves of peace flying across the sky with white puffy clouds, Mozart and Beethoven on the piano with contrary motion scales and arpeggios, crashing thunder, just perfect. And we go out there, and we're playing against Seattle, Dennis Johnson. And it was absolutely incredible because we go out there, and while I hadn't been able to play in 2 months, we couldn't win a game, it clicked instantly, the team, and it was just perfect. And we're rolling, red hot, rolling. Blazer Mania, right back. 15 minutes into the game, I'm blocking all the shots and grabbing the rebound, starting the fast break, throwing some backdoor passes, tipping in the missed shots on the offensive glass. And 15 minutes into the game, we got a 20-point lead, and we're on our way to yet another championship, and who knows how many more. The oldest guy on the team was 24. And that small undiagnosed stress fracture of my foot, the bone split in half. And I spent the next 8 years chasing the dream of being part of something special one more time. The same dream that you guys are charged with chasing yourself and finding. Search, find, and learn. Coach Wooden was right. I am the slowest learner he ever had.
Bill,
Yes.
on that, did you speak occasionally?
One finish.
Yeah.
The support group, that's so critical. You got to have your team. You got to have that belief. You got to have the trust. But mostly what you have to do is trust yourself. Trust your own gut instincts and to be able to stand up to the peer pressure. And the pressures on you guys are unbelievable. It is so much tougher today. And all the different things that you're facing on a constant basis and how it's unrelenting and unforgiving. And so know as you try to walk like a giant on the land, know as you try to sell yourself, know as you try to create for yourself, that you can't get other people to like you. You can't get other people to buy what you're selling until you like yourself. And that's the hardest thing to do. Well, it's the first thing you have to do. Learn to like yourself. And that's why you have to be able to stand up in front of that mirror and look at yourself and just say, okay, this is who I am. Am I satisfied? Am I happy with who I am, with what I represent, with where I'm going? Thank you, Mike. Yes, sorry.
Last night in your broadcast on ESPN2, after I called the Beaver game, went home and watched that, enjoyed listening to your work, you referenced...
So you were the one.
Yeah. You referenced a book that I've read with great pleasure through the years, and I recommended anybody in the room to learn more about Bill, life, the Blazers, Jack Ramsey, John Wooden, The Breaks of the Game by the great David Halberstam, The Breaks of the Game. When we talked about 15 years ago, Bill, I asked you what you thought of the book, and at that time you said, I haven't read it. It's too painful to go back and revisit all of those things.
It's the same way today. Still can't read it. It's too sad. It was the greatest moment of my life. It was the highest of highs. That championship parade, Mike, that we celebrated, that championship team, which was so brilliant and so perfectly put together, and just the way I love to play basketball, with the speed and the teamwork and the fast break, and how everything is just absolutely so perfect. And then it all just came crashing down. And I know you're supposed to move on. I know you're supposed to rebuild and go, but it's still it's still the saddest for me, because I can think now about that song, how sad it is, how close we came, how good it felt, and the ability to sustain the critical element of life, to keep it going, to get to what's next all the time. And I've never really been able to do that in my life. I've always had to start over. I was a player, that crashed. I was a broadcaster, that crashed. Now I'm climbing back up and starting all over again. A new world, a new life of business, focused on my hometown of San Diego, hopefully less travel, but then the bosses of the Pac-12 network, Larry Scott and John Skipper, the two most important people in my world. David Stern, the most important man in the history of basketball. Phil Knight, the most important person in the history of sport, all sport. They're at the point where they're going to step away soon. The next visionary leaders in my world of sport, entertainment, television, media, Larry Scott and John Skipper. They came to me and asked me if I would consider being a part of this, because I had moved on from broadcasting, and it did not end well for me there. And I listened to them. I always listen to everything, and I thought about it, and they gave me a chance. They gave me the same chance that John Wooden gave me, a chance to be part of something special. And that's why I've chosen to be here today. And we got this magnificent bus outside with a great bus driver, and it's just fantastic. And we're on tour. We're going out there. We're chasing it down. We're building a new and better product that ESPN and the Pac-12 network can sell and create value and wealth.
Is anybody glad that Bill is back again with us in the Pac-12 network? We're going to... Bill, thank you. Just a couple of other questions, and Bill's going to be available afterwards. I know you may have a flight.
We have to stop now? I don't have a flight.
No, okay. Hey, we're good to go. Another question here. Go ahead.
Hey, Bill. My name's Drew.
Drew.
Yes, with a D. So what are you going to say when you're surrounded by your friends, your family, your teammates, and someone gets the crazy idea to give you an award for being the greatest player of all time? What are you going to say?
I would say, where's Kareem? Kareem was, I had a chance to be a good player. I was lucky to have great coaches and incredible teammates. And my teammates could catch the ball. And it makes all the difference in the world. Because no matter, if you're a passer, which my favorite part of the game was starting the fast break. But if I had a bunch of slow guys who couldn't run, who couldn't catch, who couldn't think, who couldn't finish, what good am I? So I was lucky. Jack Ramsey, he saw what I had. And he said, I got to get Lionel Hollins and Johnny Davis and Bob Gross. I got to get Maurice Lucas and build a team here. So they did that. And, you know, Maurice Lucas and Jack Ramsey and the Blazer fans are the reason why I'm sitting here today. Because it would not have happened without those three critical components. I'm the luckiest guy in the world. Is that a satisfactory answer? Or? No.
Jack Ramsey called this guy here, and he was the Blazer coach for the championship team in '77, and called Bill the greatest player, the greatest competitor, and the greatest person that he ever had the privilege of coaching. And we've talked a lot about the great John Wooden, but tell us a little bit about Jack.
I think Jack was drunk that day. No, Jack made me the best player I ever was. Jack took what... When I first met Jack, when he became the coach of the Trailblazers, and he came around and had a meeting with all the players, at the end of the meeting, I begged and pleaded with him. I said, Jack, coach us as if we don't know anything about basketball. And when John Wooden found out that I had said that to Jack Ramsey, he said, Coach Ramsey, you tell that Walton to call me up right this minute. I've got something to say to him. But Jack Ramsey, he took it to such an incredible level of mental discipline and analysis, because Wooden was a completely different coach. In 4 years with John Wooden, we never watched film. We never used the blackboard. We never had a play. We never called timeout. He mentioned the other team twice in 4 years. We lost both of those games. Thanks a lot, Coach. But Ramsey, he organized it on an individual basis, where he would get out and know every single opponent and every aspect of their game, their weaknesses, their strengths. And then he would just break down every little detail, and he was just phenomenal and so incredibly intense. And I've never played for a coach, because none of the coaches I played for ever called plays. We called our own plays, if we had any plays. But Jack Ramsey, he wanted to call the plays, but we would just ignore him. We would just wave him off and not even look over at the sideline. But then when we did look over there, he was calling the same play that we were calling at the same time, and he was often 2 seconds ahead of us. And just that sense, that intuition, we loved Jack. And he was just absolutely brilliant. And he made me the best player that I ever was, by far. And this is where I played my best basketball, and I just wish that it could have lasted forever. Yeah. And I just wish I could have done something in my life. And
here's a young, aspiring broadcaster in her own right. This is Lydia.
Hello, Lydia.
Hi. So you've been great on both sides of the ball, playing the game and calling the game. And it seems like a lot of the time people ask, how do you make a great basketball player, and what makes a basketball player great? And so my question to you would be, what makes a sports broadcaster great, and what makes a sports analyst great?
It's what you like as a consumer. And I can only be myself. And I have to like myself to project that I'm having fun and that I care about this. Because if I don't care, why are you going to care? And I look at the players, and I tell the players, make me care. Make me care that I'm here, and I want to come back. And I remember when our son Luke, I talked about Luke a little bit, right? So you know who Luke is. Luke gets drafted by the Lakers. And so Luke is a very quiet and shy young man at the time, much like I am today. And he's going to, he grew up in San Diego with us, goes to Tucson, nice quiet town, umbrella under Lute Olson, but now all of a sudden he's going to the Lakers. And it's absolutely incredible because that is a really, really, really giant, teeming, nasty, mean, vicious, tough city and big-time world out there. And so I take Luke up to Los Angeles and introduce him to a bunch of my friends and show him the lay of the land and say, you know, if you ever get in trouble, call these guys. And so we're driving around, and it's one of these incredibly tough, hot, sunny days when the 25 million people who live within an hour and a half of that megalopolis there, they're all on the freeway at the same time, right? And it's just gridlock traffic, and I hate traffic. I'm the worst backseat driver in the world, and I hate wasting my time in cars, and it's just awful. You know, I can get through there on my bicycle in a heartbeat, but there we were, stuck as can be. And finally, I'm just so frustrated and so disappointed, and we're stopped, and I look over at Luke, and I said, Luke, just look around. And you see, in just a glance around, you can see 5 million people in your own eyes right here in these endless 5 to 7 story apartment buildings that just go on and on and on. I said, Luke, everywhere you look and all these people you see, they're all Laker fans. And they're all Laker fans for one reason, because they're all stuck in their cars, and when they're finding that radio, they hear Chick Hearn's voice. And I don't know if anybody here has had the privilege of ever hearing Chick Hearn call a game, but this guy was unbelievable. I found Chick when I was 10 years old. It was 1962, and I had a transistor AM radio, and I'm dialing it around, and this voice comes on, and it just changed my life. And I never left. It was the same way with the Grateful Dead. I found Chick, and his enthusiasm, his passion, his interest, his knowledge, the education, every game was a whole new journey. It was like reading a magnificent book, and he was so smart and so intelligent and so articulate, the magical use of the language. And I just couldn't wait to be there. It's like with a great professor here in college. You know, the greatest professors, their classrooms are packed, and everybody's just signing up. And you're a storyteller as a media person. You have to convey the joy, convey the happiness, but also to convey the pain. And when people are messing up, you got to tell them. You got to call them out. And never discount the intelligence of your audience. Speak to them as if they're the smartest people in the world, because they are. And they'll know in a minute about your credibility, about your integrity, about your authenticity, about your currency, about your relevancy. And when they like you, they'll keep coming back the way those Laker fans have throughout the decades for Chick Hearn. It was absolutely unbelievable. We love Chick. And, you know, I've been touched by so many great broadcasters. I mean, Dick Enberg, Bob Costas, Greg Gumbel, Snapper Jones, Tom Hammond, and it's just
Bill Schonley.
Ralph Lawler, the Clipper broadcaster. I mean, no one in the history of the world has seen more bad basketball than Ralph Lawler. And yet this guy, every game, he comes out, and it is the most important, it is the greatest gift of all to be able to sit there and call a game. And it's just so fun. And now I get that chance again, because it was over for me. Now I got a chance. Larry Scott and John Skipper. What could be better?
Thank you, Lydia.
What was your question?
He answered it, I think.
I answered
Thanks,
it.
Lydia. Here we go.
Hey, Bill. My name's Cody.
Cody, how are you?
Good. Could you maybe tell us just your favorite Larry Bird story?
Oh, gosh. I love Larry Bird. Never think for a moment when I tell these stories that one is more important than the other. In the ESPNification of the world, everything is either the greatest or the worst. Life is not like that. And the question about John Wooden, what was the best thing about John Wooden? Everything was the best thing about John Wooden. The same thing with Larry Bird. Larry Bird, he was cool. Larry Bird loved to portray himself as the hick from French Lick. But Larry Bird was a genius. He knew everything about everybody. Larry Bird, who couldn't jump this high. Larry Bird, who couldn't run faster than I can move today. And I'm 60 with all these operations and all these body parts all fused together. He couldn't run faster than I can move today. Yet Larry Bird was the quickest guy I ever saw. Championship success. Success in anything you do is based on two things. Balance, which the coach talked about. Balance and symmetry. And then quickness. How am I going to get from here to there before somebody else does? So I can be first to the ball with the idea, the new company, to get the job done before somebody else gets there and does it first. Lewis and Clark, come right here, first. Balance, quickness, tough. Anybody here read Undaunted Courage? You want to hear a story of trying to make it, trying to figure out the challenges. But Larry Bird, one day, when playing for Boston, every company in Boston wanted Larry to be their spokesperson. They wanted to sign him up to a big endorsement contract. Larry turned them all down. I don't want, that's ridiculous. I'm a basketball player. And this one restaurant right around the corner from the Garden, they kept saying, come on, Larry, come on, be our spokesperson. We'll make it if you are our advertiser. And Larry said, okay. And then they said, oh my gosh, what are we going to pay him? This is Larry Bird. And Larry says, you don't have to pay me a dime. The only thing I want is that all my teammates, they get to come and eat at your restaurant for free whenever they want. And they said, okay. Little did they realize that Rick Carlisle would eat every meal there. And then they said, okay, well, we got to have a commercial. We got to make it the commercial. And Larry said, nah, just set a big table for 12. After practice one day, we'll come, just roll the cameras. No script, no director, nothing. Just roll the camera and then take and make what you can out of it. And they just did that. We just had a grand time. They had all this food, sumptuous feast and drink and everything. We were just having the time of our life. And they rolled, and they made some great television commercials out of it. And after every game, we all went there. We all had our own individual tables, Chief and Kevin and Larry and DJ and Danny and Scotty and Rick and Jerry and all the guys. And it was just fantastic. Because when you're on a great team, it's just perfect. But that sense of the team comes from the guy at the top. And that was Larry Bird. And so when we're going for the final game, the championship game, we're at the Garden. And an hour and a half before tip-off, the fans are already in the Garden. And they are yelling and screaming, and they are so fired up. They are ready. And Larry is out on the court, and he's warming up. We're all in the locker room stretching, getting ready. And Larry comes in to the locker room, and he looks around. He says, hey, I was just out there. Looks at his watch. There's an hour and a half to go before the game. The fans, I've never seen them like this. They want blood. And guys, right now, they want the blood of the Houston Rockets. But if we don't win today, they're going to want our blood. Now let's get going. And so Larry, in a game that had winners of the genetic lottery, 7'4" Ralph Sampson, 7 foot Akeem Olajuwon, 7 foot Robert Parrish, 6'10" Kevin McHale. We called him Frankenstein. Kevin, who could stand there at 6'10", erect as can be, dangle his long arms, and scratch his shins without bending over. Kevin, when he needed his foot operated on and the screw put back in his foot, they took the screw out of his neck and put it into his foot. And there was Larry. And every ball contested above the rim. Now, in the best of games, very few balls are contested above the rim. But that game, with all those players, every ball was above the rim. And Larry, who was the shortest, the slowest, and the worst jumper of the whole lot, Larry won every single ball. And instead of putting it right back up in the face of Olajuwon and Sampson, and through his own teammates of Parrish and McHale, Larry would take the ball and dribble out to the three-point line and just glance back and throw it up and then run down the court saying, yeah, we're going to win the championship. And that was Larry Bird's self-acknowledged and admitted greatest game ever. There was never a player like him. Larry, one of the 7 greatest players in the history of basketball, the others in chronological order: Russell, Wilt, Oscar, Kareem, Larry, Magic, and Jordan. Will Kobe and LeBron join that group? We'll see. mean, the Laker fan, he left early today, boy. I mean, front runners, come on. Give me loyalty. Stick with it. Give the guys a chance.
We got,
Yeah, Michael.
we have another question. Go ahead.
Got a loyal Laker fan right here.
Oh, my God.
Born and raised Laker fan. But my question for you is, you've been coached under Rocky, your high school coach, and then John Wooden, but who are your inspirations growing up? Because they're the inspirations of my generation.
My heroes growing up as a child in sports, Bill Russell and Muhammad Ali. In the social and political arena, Martin Luther King, Bobby Kennedy, and Sergeant Shriver. Of those 5 people, I got to meet 3 of them and become friends with them. Dr. King and Bobby Kennedy were gunned down within months of each other when I was 16 years old. That kind of stuff never leaves you. But what those guys did, they had purpose and passion in their life. They stood for more than stuff. It wasn't about material accumulation or physical gratification. It was about playing with a goal in mind to make the world better, to change the world, to create opportunity, to create change, to drive it forward. And what the basketball world has been so fortunate to have for the last 30 years has been David Stern, who sees basketball as a vehicle to drive the world to a better place and create wealth along the way. And who is that next generation going to be? And who's going to be that stand-up guy so that this young man right here could look as a 12-year-old and say, yeah, I want to be like him the way I wanted to be like Bill Russell and Muhammad Ali, that I wanted to walk like a giant like Bobby Kennedy and Martin Luther King and Sergeant Shriver. And I was lucky. I got to meet all these guys. I got to know them all as friends. And they were better and they were cooler and they were nicer than I ever dreamed of. And when that happens in your life, man, you just feel so good. When I was 10, growing up in my hometown, San Diego there, the Chargers moved from LA to San Diego. And their practice facility, they practiced at the public park a half mile from my house. And I would ride my skateboard or my bike there every day and watch them practice. And I'd hang on the fence and I'd watch through the fence every day to see guys like Sid Gilman as the coach, John Hadel, Tobin Rote, Jack Kemp, Lance Allworth, Keith Lincoln, Paul Lowe, Chuck Allen, Ernie Ladd, Earl Faison, Hall of Famers, top to bottom. As a 10-year-old boy, I'm watching these guys every single day, big wide eyes. And then I got to high school, and I started to become a basketball talent. And I got to meet all these guys, and how kind, and how generous, and how encouraging, and how supportive. And that stayed with me for the rest of my life. When I came up here to Portland, here I was, 21, and we're in the NBA, and I see that's all incredible. And we're playing every day over at our practice site, which was the Jewish Community Center there in Beaverton. And Danny Ainge from the Willamette Valley here, just down the road here in Eugene. He's in 8th grade, 9th grade. He's just driving up to Portland just so we could watch his practice. And they wouldn't let him in the door because he wasn't a member. And I'd come walking in, and I'd say, come on, young man, you're coming with us, you're on our team. And then he'd get in the game and he'd play with us. And Danny just became just an unbelievable force, and how great that is. So never forget what Nelson Mandela told us all. Nelson Mandela, 27 years in a solitary confinement for what he believed. Freedom, individual rights, free expression, the equality of man, regardless of your skin color. And they threw him in the jailhouse for thinking. And when they let him out and they asked him, he said, people will always forget what you say. They will always forget what you do, but they will never forget how you treat them. I'm the luckiest guy in the world. What was your question, ma'am? I'm sorry.
Well, I just wanted to know who your inspirations were, but I had another question.
Who my inspirations were?
Yeah, before Wooden. I had another question, but were you upset when Luke signed with the Lakers, the Celtics' arch enemy?
No. I was the luckiest and proudest dad in the world. The Celtics have become the best franchise. I mean, the Lakers have become the best franchise. And you know, they are the most popular ones because they've been able to retool. And that's the challenge for all of us. is to always reinvent yourself. Every single day is a new challenge, and to never look back. And that's what the great coaches, Wooden, Auerbach, Ramsey, the great leaders, the great musicians, they come out every day. You ever go to a Springsteen show or a Mick Jagger show or a Bob Dylan show or Neil Young? I mean, these guys, they come out and they deliver. It's unbelievable. They're like the mailman, yeah.
Hey, Bill, I have a question for
Yeah,
you.
Mike.
We got a couple more here, but everybody here, everyone, maybe you do too, social media,
Right.
and everyone has the ability to communicate that way every day, all the time, and you walk on campus or wherever, and everybody's walking with their head down in their phone while they're walking from class to class or whatever. I mean, that's the way it is. What would your mom, a librarian who did not allow you, she saw what was on TV and chose what I read, she didn't buy you a TV set
Right,
when you were
right.
young. What do you make of the social
My mom has a
media?
TV now.
Okay.
And my mom has a computer now. And she fought it religiously and just doggedly. But then as soon as she got it, she said, oh my gosh, this is life. This is communication. And it's like anything else, it's how you use it. And I'm the biggest believer in the world in technology, driving change for the better. And that's what we're doing. We're all trying to come up with the next new product, the next new idea, the next new dream that we can monetize, that we can build upon. And the same lessons, though, apply. And that is actions and choices have ramifications, and they carry consequences. And that's why you have to be so very careful. And that's why when I'm talking on the phone, when I'm writing things down, I'm very, very careful as to what goes out. And because I know that that red light is on, and I know that everything I say, someone is going to look at and either applaud or criticize. But that's okay, and that's why I think about what I'm going to say. And that sense of the power of the social media, the power of involvement. Be a participant in the game of life. Don't be a spectator. Don't sit around and watch other people having fun. Get going yourself. Imagine being a ball player where you just sat there and waited for the ball to fall in your lap. Imagine if you're a broadcaster and you just waited for them to ask you a question. Jump in there, fight for airtime, substitute yourself. And it's just so absolutely incredible, you know, to see how it's all played out in that, in the world of social media, how it's played out in the way we get to vote. And I'm not here to tell you who to vote for. I'm just telling you to vote, because that is your ultimate power. As a consumer, you vote with your choices, what you buy. As a guy who consumes media, whether you watch ESPN or Fox, that's a choice, and that comes down to money for these giant companies. We just had 2 elections recently in our world, the world that we all live in here. Sports, the Baseball Hall of Fame, and then a big election back in November, where we made a choice for the future of our country. And the incredible thing about the media and about free speech is that anybody can get up and say whatever they want. Whatever they want. And we accept that. But when we get to vote, what we're doing with that vote is we're saying, do we believe you? Do we think what you're doing is telling the truth? And so that vote in the Baseball Hall of Fame, which said nobody, that's what those writers, and that's what I believe. And that vote that happened back in November, that's the direction that I want this country to go in. A country that is caring and concerned about what's going to happen with all of our young people. What are we going to do about this student debt? What are we going to do about the lack of job opportunities? It's not about just the guys at the top. It's not I got mine and forget you. No, this is a team. We got to figure this out. We got to create jobs. We got to create wealth. We got to create opportunities. And that's what ESPN and the Pac-12 are doing. Young guys coming up with a dream. Hey, let's create a television network. Let's play more basketball. Let's build great stadiums. We got top coaches here. Let's sell this. Because unless you're on ESPN in the world of sports, you don't exist. And now that's going to happen. Great for the Pac-12. It's just going to be fantastic. And with the $25 million per school coming in every single year from that TV money, better coaches, better players, better facilities. And all these people around the country, they're going to say, yeah, Pac-12, that's happening. That's cool. I want to be a part of that. And just think where we live. Think of the demographics. Arizona, Utah, Colorado, Washington, Oregon, California. That's where we live. That's where we want to live. You know, we're not moving to those other places. Believe me, if the Pilgrims had landed on the West Coast, the East Coast would still be a wilderness over there. What was your question again, Michael? I'm sorry. That's okay.
Hi, Bill. My name is Matt.
Hello, Matt.
My question for you has to do with your broadcasting career and looking back, and what games or what game in particularly stands out to you as the best game you ever called or were a part of?
I'll drift and dream here for a bit with you. One time I'm calling a game with Ralph Lawler, the man who has seen more bad basketball in the history of the world. And this is an awesome game, and it's happening, and it's up and down, and it's just perfect. And I blurt out to Ralph and to the audience, this game is so good, it doesn't even need announcers. And Ralph just moves on as nothing had happened, right? And the first time we go to commercial break, Ralph leans in, he says, don't you ever say that again. But what you learn from these incredible announcers. One of my first big games, I got a chance to call a game that it was Florida State and Indiana in the NCAA tournament. Indiana had Bob Knight, just crazed, wild, unbelievable, throwing chairs, smashing down phones, kicking players, choking his players, and all this stuff. Unbelievable. And this guy from Florida State is having a big game. I mean, he is on fire, and he's just taking it right to Indiana and Bob Knight, and it's intense, and it's fierce, and it's halftime, and they got a big lead, and they're rolling. Second half comes out, and Bob Knight has changed everything. He has completely changed the tenor of the game, and this guy who was Elgin and Oscar and Kobe and LeBron in the first half, he's now become Benoit Benjamin in the second half, right? Just awful. And it's just a complete reversal of fortune, and the game turns, and Bob Knight and Indiana, they come back and they win the game. And we're wrapping up the game, we're closing it down, and as my partner is talking, the SID for Florida State comes up to me and said, hey, Bill, you know, I had the guy who was so good in the first half and didn't play so well in the second half. Play so well, the guy stunk it up, he was awful, what's wrong with him? I said, oh, Bill, he's got an upset stomach, and that's why he's not playing well. So my partner's wrapping it up, he's saying goodbye, and I say, hold on a second, breaking news here. So I lean in and I say, we just got word that the guy stunk it up so bad because he's got an upset stomach. I take a big pause, and my announcer's about ready to start again. Upset stomach? I jump right back in. Upset stomach? Are you kidding me? It's the NCAA tournament. The fate of the known world's on the line here. That's my player. I take the guy with the upset stomach down in the locker room downstairs, put my finger down his throat, have him puke it back up, and let's get going. And my broadcast partner looks at me and, oh my God. Now, in television, as in everything in life, you've got a boss. And at the booth, at the table, there's a phone. Not a ringer, but with red lights all around it. And so when I start talking about putting the finger down the guy's throat and puking it back up, that phone lights up, right? And it goes to commercial. And my partner says, it's for you, Bill. And so I pick it up, and I say, hello? And the guy goes, Walton, my name is Neil Pilson, and I'm the president of CBS Sports. And if you look at your watch right now, you'll notice that it's the dinner hour in New York City. And in the dinner hour in New York City, on our air, we don't talk about putting fingers down people's throat and having them puke it back up. Well, I apologize profusely. I kept my job, and I'm still here again today, although 13 years of Clippers basketball, I got fired every year. One time I got fired at halftime. It's been a good fun ride. So let's see. There was what else? What else about the broadcasting there? I remember early on. It's very tough. You know, some of the tougher things in terms of the technical skills. You know, you're working in broadcasting like you work in basketball. And the way I learned how to speak was that my a broadcaster, a legendary broadcaster, he taught me how to speak. His name is Marty Glickman. Check him out. This is an incredible legend. And you know, his quick story, Marty was the greatest track and field star of his day. And he grew up in Brooklyn, went to Syracuse, and made the U.S. Olympic team as the premier track and field star. He's got a book called, Marty's now dead, but he's got a book called The Fastest Kid on the Block. And he goes to Syracuse, and he makes the Olympic team, and they're in Berlin in '36. And on the eve of the Olympics, he's about ready to go out there and become the star of the Olympic Games, his one chance at the shining moment there. And Adolf Hitler and Avery Brundage, Adolf Hitler of Germany and Avery Brundage, the head of the US OC, they get together and have a meeting. And this is all documented in the book. And Hitler tells Brundage, hey, look, we're not going to win Germany. You guys are going to win everything. But what we can't have the Jewish guys win. And Marty was Jewish. It's bad enough that the black guys are going to win everything, but it's worse if the Jewish guys, so don't let your Jewish guys participate and just let all the black guys go. So Avery Brundage said, deal. And so Marty doesn't get to compete, doesn't even get to run, doesn't even get to jump, doesn't even get to pass or receive the baton. And he goes home a crushed and broken, beaten and bitter man. But when he gets home and there's nothing for him to do, where are you going to go? So he starts his life over, reinvents himself, and becomes the broadcaster. The greatest broadcaster of his day, the Chick Hearn, the Mike Parker. Broadcasts Giants, Jets, Yankees, Rangers, Knicks, every team in New York, is the voice of New York for decades and spends his whole life making this world a better place. And so the lesson of what do you do in the face of adversity and how difficult the challenges are. And so as you're chasing it down, study for those master teachers. Now, I know I was going somewhere with that story, but I forget what the end was. And Marty, who taught me how to speak, now they're scouring the earth to find the person to get me to stop speaking.
Just a question about your time in Oregon. When you were playing with the Blazers, did you get out of Portland very much? And if so, where did you go? What were your favorite things to do, places to see?
I loved Oregon. I had so much fun. When I first got here, we rode our bikes downtown to the U.S. Geological Office, and we found a map of Oregon with every hot springs in the entire state. And then we took our car and we drove to every single one of them and soaked in the hot water. And then I had an old farm out there in Eagle Creek on a ridge overlooking the Cascades, just between Sandy and Estacada. We go to Eagle Creek all the time and swim in the waters. We'd go to the coast and ride our bikes and just out there in Portland, and it was just fantastic. The Columbia Gorge, and it was just incredible. I had so much fun here. The Clackamas River, the Sandy River, and then Washougal River up on the north slope there of the gorge, and it was just perfect. I just wish it had lasted forever.
Hey, Bill, last night on your telecast on over here, Bill.
Oh, sorry.
Last night, you referred to the Nestucca River. That might have been a broadcast first, but you talked about the Nestucca River as it related to big men coming into the game.
Well, absolutely. Well, a year ago, or a couple years ago now, I was up here, and I came up for an event, and I was going to be the speaker, and it happened to coincide with the 4th of July weekend. And so I said to my wife, hey, look at this. This is cool. Let's just stay over the 4th of July, and I'll bring my bike. And let's go, and I'll go for a ride. And so I rode from Portland. I rode the gorge one day out to Hood River and on the south shore, and then back on the north shore. And then the next day I rode from Portland down to Astoria and Seaside, and then stayed there, and then from there down to Florence or wherever it was, and then back up and over the Nestucca River, and then back into Portland, and it was just fantastic, and not a cloud in the sky the entire time. And I love my bike, Mike. I love my bike, and that road that comes back over on the Nestucca River, oh my gosh, that is just perfect.
We're getting
we don't have roads like that
in
California.
No.
No.
Well,
we don't have rivers.
You're welcome back up here anytime. We're so great.
Portland and Oregon has always treated me better than I deserve, Mike.
Well, we love you, Bill, and we're glad you're here. We're getting kind of the wrap-up sign, so we got time for one more question right here.
Hi, my name is Ashley.
Hi,
and
Ashley.
I have more kind of like a from like a sportscaster, but also an analyst question, what would you suggest, or in words of wisdom, for female athletes today trying to be successful as you were in your career?
As an athlete or a broadcaster?
As an athlete.
When I was growing up, when I was your age, there was very little opportunity for females. And then Title IX changed everything, and it's the greatest thing in the world. And it's the same, it's the same outline. What is different is that you're going to have a different identity and a different style and a different culture, but the same platforms of foundation, being the player, being the leader, making the choices, the discipline, the structure, all of that is the same. But you have to have your own identity, your own culture, your own style that you're selling. And one of the huge mistakes that women's basketball makes, if I were in charge, I would have a little bit smaller ball even than you already have, and definitely a lower rim. It's just like with young children. You never have young children play on a full 10-foot basket with a regulation, a man's adult-sized basket. Because there's got to be a game that you can use and use your skill set. And so as you're building, and in the women's sports field, you have to be able to create that atmosphere, that style, and it starts with your family and friends coming. It's just like starting a business. When you're starting a business, who do you go to first? Your friends and family. And then you find that angel investor. And then the idea works, and it keeps growing, and then the venture capitalists come in from the outside, and then the private equity guys, and it just keeps building and building and growing and growing. And if you look back 30, 40 years ago, what the NBA then compared to what it is today, you say it's not even the same sport. And the challenge today, I mean, 30, 40 years ago, there were no women's sports. And now there's a ton. And they're hugely popular to some degree, to some extent. And one of the great things about the Pac-12 network and what ESPN does on a constant basis is that they give you the exposure. But when you get that moment and you're on TV, it's like when they hand you the microphone and you got the chance, always addressing the ultimate questions in life. Who am I? What am I doing here? Where am I going? And now, most importantly, when I'm on that court, when I've got that microphone, when I got a chance to be the guy, what am I going to do? Am I going to be able to deliver peak performance on command? Am I going to be able to be Larry Bird in that championship moment? Am I going to be able to inspire people to come back tomorrow, to buy that shirt, to buy that cap, to pay for parking, to come? And until you got that, and even once you get it, I mean, you fight and you fight and you fight to get it. And then the game is over and you got to get it going again the next day. And that's what Craig Robinson is facing right here. And the ultimate challenges that we all have to deal with every single day. And that path to the promised land. If you want to find out how to get somewhere, ask somebody who's coming back from where you want to go. And so that constant search and that constant belief in chasing the dream and building and all the different steps. And think of the steps in building a company, an economic empire. How are you going to make money? Where do you fit? What's your edge that separates you from the crowd? How are you going to deal with the obstacles and the barriers? How are you going to move beyond your competition, who for them it seems so really easy? And then ultimately, what's your legacy? What does it mean? Why are you doing this? Jerry Garcia and the Grateful Dead, they wrote a song about that. They called it The Morning Dew. And it's a song that Jerry sings with unbelievable passion and commitment. Now, Jerry grew up in a hard, cruel, sad, cold, wet world, San Francisco, wind blowing, fog, raining all the time, just miserable. It's tough. So he writes this song, The Morning Dew, and he talks about going outside, walking out that front door, and having to face that challenge of that sad, hard, cruel world. And one of the great things about Jerry is that he was able, with that guitar And with that powerful, soulful voice, he was able to make a sad, hard, cruel world beautiful. And so he started talking about all the children who were crying, the people who were begging for some help. And the refrain of the song that he always closes it with, does it really matter anyway? Does any of this really matter anyway? And so when you're out there fighting and you're just going for it all, always ask yourself, never forget to ask yourself those big questions. Why are we doing this? Where are we going? What does this mean? Does any of it really matter? I think it does. And that's why I'm here, proud, honored, and privileged to know Mike Parker. I'm the luckiest guy in the world. Make a difference. Chase your dream.
Bill, there's one last question from back here.
My plane's not till late tonight.
Okay, well, very good. And that is,
I'm not going to be here tomorrow.
there's
and I'm the worse off for that.
the degree of ambivalence about Phil Knight, who you referenced on your telecast last night, about being the phrase most important
man in the history of all sport.
How so? Why?
What he has done to create wealth and opportunity and to build sport, and what he has done across the board for all sport. And challenge me. If you don't believe that's true, give me another name. Give me one other person who has done more to build, to create, to develop, to promote the dream. And just because he went to the other school, and just because he supports the other school, that doesn't make him the devil. Respect for the opposition. Appreciate greatness. Appreciate the vision. When I played for the Celtics, there's nothing like the rivalry. And I watched the game last Sunday night, Oregon State, Oregon, basketball. Fantastic game. Passion, exuberance, fun. I was enthralled. The announcers were great. Steve Physiok and some guy I'd never heard of before, but did a great job of just making it fun and interesting, telling me all kinds of stuff I had no idea of. And it was just absolutely incredible because that rivalry, what you live for. And then when I was playing for the Celtics, we had a big game against the Lakers. And now we used to call them the Fakers. And they're just whining and complaining all the time. And we had nicknames for them all. Magic was tragic. Worthy was worthless, and Kareem with the big goggles and the bubble eyes, he was the lizard. Right? And so we're in the huddle, and we're trying to figure out, and it's right there at the game, right at the crunch. It's all right there, and it's all happening. And we got to make it one play right now. So we're figuring it out. We're talking back and forth, and I'm saying, you take tragic, you take worthless, and I'll take the lizard. And Casey Jones is like, wait a second, guys. He steps in, he says, come on. That's a great team. That's a great franchise. We got to show respect for the competition. Now go out there and kill tragic, worthless, and the lizard right now. But that sense of believing that we're all in this together, and sadly, that's what's fallen apart in our country. And think of a country as a team. And every year, every championship team displays the same great values, characteristics, traditions, and legacy of what it means. Selflessness, humility, fundamentals, physical fitness, commitment, all the things we've talked about all day. And all the teams that lose, it's all selfishness, greed, individual agendas, hype, lack of preparation, lack of dedication, lack of physical fitness. And people don't learn. And so as you build and as you chase that down, realize the importance of promoting the good, positive values. And that's why I love working with Mike Parker so much. Because Mike is like Chick. Mike is like Shanley. Mike is like Ralph Lawler. Mike is always about making everybody else the star of the team. Because while I gave you the 7 guys who were at the top of the list in terms of being the best, my favorites is a different list. My favorites, Bill Russell, Magic, and Steve Nash. Guys who play to make other people the star. And that's what great champions do. The humility of John Wooden, the selflessness. John Wooden was a teacher who wrote his master's thesis to get his credential to teach on how to teach poetry. John Wooden, whose biggest salary ever was $32,500. John Wooden is absolutely incredible. And what he did, and what Phil Knight has done to build up sport across the world, across the globe. And there's just no other individual. You know, I spent 3 years on the ground. And when you spend those 3 years on the ground, you have a lot of time to think about a lot of things. Mostly, what am I going to do when I get up? Here I am today at Oregon State.
And Bill, we are glad you came. Were you glad Bill Walton came today? Thank you so much. Thank you, Bill. Do you have time? They said that you might sign a few things. I know some people brought some books and posters and that type of thing, but are we going to hear, you have the Oregon State UCLA game next week, correct? So we're going to he's going to call the Beaver UCLA game. Is that right, Bill?
Next Thursday night on ESPN, the game of the millennium from Poly Pavilion. Oregon State comes down to take on the City Slickers from Los Angeles. UCLA. Hopefully there will be nobody there holding the horses back. Because that was one thing about John Wooden. John Wooden, he never held you back. He let